Good morning. I'm so happy that there's no pressure today. There are few people in the room, so it's okay. My name is Cristina Stancilescu. I'm a journalist and I'm very happy to be here and very honored, of course. I'd like to introduce our guest. Today's guest is one of Ireland's most distinguished actors, Aidan Gillen. Has built an extraordinary career. Across film, television and theatre, earning international recognition for roles in The Wire, Game of Thrones and many other acclaimed productions. Known for bringing intelligence, depth and complexity to every character he plays, he has become one of the most compelling performers of his generation. We are delighted to welcome him here and to be near him here at TIFF. This year, TIFF audiences also have the opportunity to see Aidan Gillen in two of his latest films, Gorky Resort and Recreation, while he also serves as a member of the official competition jury. Today's masterclass is a chance to explore the remarkable journey of an actor who has moved effortlessly between major international productions and independent cinema. So, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you for that very flattering introduction. Not a lot to live up to there, and thank you all for coming. And apologies that this is apart from Irish, Gaelic, which I'm not even that good at, I'm going to be speaking in English, so, you know, I think that's the only way we have to do this, right?
Okay.
So we'll be fine, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I mean, I wouldn't just assume, but you know, that's what we're going to have to do. If you don't understand my accent or I'm going too fast, because I have a tendency to talk fast when I know that the clock is ticking. Just tell me to slow down or repeat myself or, you know, whatever. You know yourself.
It's okay, it's okay. First of all, what was the most intense experience you had with these two movies? Gorky Resort, I want to speak about first, because it's a movie, well, not actually, but with a theme that hurts us, everybody. It's about death and discrimination and exploitation. And what was the intense experience you had with this?
Yeah, so Gorky Resort, for those who don't know, it's a dramatization of it's set in Poland in 1939 in a Soviet indoctrination camp at a time when Poland was being invaded from one side by the Germans and the other side by the Russians in the early days of World War II. The story is, you know, it ultimately leads to the Katyn massacre, which you're probably familiar with. But the idea was to not give the game away as such. You know, a lot of people, I'm surprised by how many people don't know about Katyn. You know, as in the story was buried. It's hard to keep a story like that secret, but you know, it was buried and the responsibility for it was denied, etc. By the Russians, then admitted to, then denied again. But the idea being that maybe we can, I'm speaking as the character now, which might be unnerving, as Vasily Zarubin, who I played, we can get the intelligentsia, you know, the officer class, the artists, you know, the medical elite. We can get them in one place and just convince them, persuade them that, you know, this ideology is best. Maybe we can do this without too much bloodshed and without too much strife. You know, that's where Zarubin was coming from. He, of course, believed in, you know, what he was doing was right and that he was a reasonable, cultured man. And we can't spend the whole time talking about this particular thing, but yeah, it's about death, but it's about resistance, you know. And yeah, I mean, these days, people, unfortunately, when you're doing press for things, they say, "Can you describe this in 3 words?" and you say, if you're me, you say, no, can't. And then they say, can you describe it in one word? And then you're pissed off. But the one word that I did come up with was resistance when I was put under immense pressure somewhere. Thing is, you know, as an actor, for me, an actor who has always loved cinema and who's always loved Polish cinema and who knows, you know, is well aware of its position in, you know, on the world stage, it was a real privilege to be asked to go along and work with some of the best people in contemporary Polish cinema, you know, some of the best actors, cinematographer, director. You know, it's like it was... I was surprised to be asked to come and play this character, but it was a Ukrainian, Polish, Irish co-production. Now there was no mandate that there had to be an Irish actor in there, but it just happens that way. The post-production, the sound work was going to be done in Ireland anyway. But given what's happening, and you know, of course, the reason the film finally got to, or one of the reasons it's finally got to be made was because of what is happening in, you know, in Ukraine right now, and one of the reasons we wanted to tell that story.
Do you think that history repeating?
Well, history always repeats.
Always. Yeah. And we learn something about.
Well, sometimes we do.
Sometimes we forget.
Yeah.
Looking back at your career, was there a role or something that changed the way you think about acting?
Yeah, I mean, that's constantly happening, as in all the time, yeah. And I certainly don't ever feel like I've got a real bead on it or I know what's what. The way I came into it, you know, I'm not a trained actor. I didn't go to drama school. You know, I was very keen to get out of school as soon as I was able to, you know, I just didn't like sitting in classrooms and, you know, I do really respect teachers and you know, what they do, but I found the classroom environment extremely stifling and I just needed to get out of there. So, but, you know, I was just 16, maybe, just gone 17 by the time I got out of school and I didn't have any ambition to go to college or to do any of that stuff. But I did really want to be an actor because I had started acting in a theater group, and I was able to start getting work straight away. But it was a hustle, you know. And the actors, I was just watching other actors on VHS, really, you know. So the equivalent for me going to college or drama school or film school or whatever was going to the VHS rental shop and watching everything available, you know, and there was a lot, you know. So myself and my brother was quite influential in the kind of films he was into. You know, if you've got an older brother or sister who's into good music or good, you know, it's often where we get our tastes from. And sometimes, you know, you want to do the opposite of what they do, or, you know, so it's always a great stimulus having older siblings who are into something, art, music, film, whatever, whether you like their particular taste or not. But it's just watching everything, you know, from the art house European stuff to the horror movies to westerns to, you know, the English, you know, merchant ivory stuff, old black and white stuff, everything. And the actors I liked tended to be, in Ireland anyway, they were much older, you know. There's an actor called Donal McCann who I tuned into like really early on. Most people don't know him. The one film he's done that people do seem to know, it's an adaptation of a James Joyce short story called The Dead. It was John Huston, the American filmmaker. It's his last film. John Huston is, you know, an amazing filmmaker, but this was his last film, and it is a masterpiece, and it's James Joyce's best short story, and it is a masterpiece, and it is one of the best short stories in the world. This actor is amazing, and he's not a matinee idol, you know. He's always seemed to be 20 years older than he was, and just quite interior, you know. So he was an actor I was watching. I was kind of obsessed with Mickey Rourke and Sean Penn when I was 15, 16, and unwittingly and ill-advisedly probably trying to be them and too much like them. There's a film called Rumblefish. On my 16th birthday, I was in the cinema on my own in Dublin watching this film and thinking, I really want to be an actor.
How do you decide whether a project is worth several months of your life?
It's the script, always, and it has been from the start. It's all very well finding a flashy role, but if it's not within a script that makes sense, I don't see the point in doing it. And if it's not going to be, the idea that it might be seen is good. The idea that the production values might be high is good. But right from the beginning, I always held out, waiting for, I suppose what you would call, although I wasn't aware of it at the time, like a sensational role. I didn't particularly, having spent all those years in school where I was bored out of my mind, I didn't want to then get locked into playing a character who sits in an office for, years on end. And the first ones that I did get did fit into that bracket. And once I had got myself a little bit on the road as an actor, I waited, sometimes a longer than would be advised, and turned down roles when I needed the money, and even though it wasn't much money, but just needed to eat, to waiting for something that was going to had spark, because it was going to be more interesting, not because it was a career move, but because it was going to be interesting for me and to look at, I hoped. And I'm really bad at auditions, like really bad.
Yeah, you said that.
I've never got a job from an audition in my life, so no, I haven't. I really haven't. So the people who gave me work, most people wouldn't, right? So it's like 95% of the people that I came across were just like looking at me like, what the fuck is that? I mean, I couldn't get I couldn't get an agent. I couldn't get, so I used to not gate crash or doorstep, I would, find out what theatre director, because in the early days it was only theatre. There wasn't much going on in the screen world in Ireland when I was starting out. It was starting to happen, there was a couple of directors who were starting to make film, a couple of great directors actually, like Jim Sheridan and Neil Jordan, who, quickly, found positions on the world stage and still do remain, Neil Jordan's definitely our best filmmaker still. But, it was kind of, where is he going to be? And I'll go down and see if I can meet him. And I did, Neil Jordan had just directed this film called Company of Wolves. Went on to direct Mona Lisa, The Crying Game, Butcher Boy, like a lot of great films, Interview with the Vampire. I did manage to strike up a conversation with him for a few hours in a bar. And he talked to me and took me seriously. And that was as good as anything, that was to be taken, given some credibility and be taken seriously by a filmmaker like that, even though I hadn't done anything. That I got years out of that, like, I was able to take myself seriously for 10 years after that.
When you first receive a script, what is the very first thing you look for in a character?
In a character? Complexity. I mean, you said there, the complexity, a bit of ambivalence, a bit of mystery, a bit of enigma. I've always found I'm more interested in people that I don't know about, whether it's people in real life on the street or a character. I'm always way more intrigued if I don't know what they're about. And it's the stuff that it's the things that people or characters don't say that gets me to lean in. So I'd be looking for that, ambiguity, ambivalence, just different conflicting emotions and traits. I suppose that sounds like a lot and that it's quite complicated, but just instinctively I would be drawn to people who I can't quite work out.
Do you feel the need that the character supposed to be very well defined, or you would like to add?
Yeah, it wouldn't have to be super well defined, but I think the script and the world of the script would have to be super well defined, unless it's a really improvised type of thing, which is, I wouldn't mind coming back to that in a minute, actually. So, you know, the first job I got that was really, you know, gave me a proper break, it was a BBC film. So I'll give you a bit of context. So I ended up going to London when I was 18. I got a theatre job in this tiny theatre called the Bush Theatre in London, where all the best new plays were being done. And it's you know, the whole theatre, it's in a room over a pub. It holds about 80 people, and the audience are where you are, right, or closer. You know, it's like so you can't get away with any fakery at all. And that was a great place to, you know, learn your craft, because that is where I learned. Ended up in London, got an agent, got cast in by this director called Antonia Bird. Now, Antonia was a great director. She didn't get to do too much in her lifetime, which was way too short. And one of the projects she did was this film called BBC drama called Safe. And the BBC is a state broadcaster, but they were really doing, you know, able to do quite cutting-edge drama throughout from the 60s, actually, but in the 70s and the 80s, you know, directors like Alan Clark, for example. Alan Clark went on to make films like Scum, Elephant, The Firm. You know, you can make these quite out there, daring dramas with no interference that would end up on television, and like 10 million people would see it. And it was quite incredible. They don't really do it anymore. It ended up like they stopped making that stuff and started making, you know, ballroom dancing with the stars and stuff like this. You know, that became, because people used to watch that stuff. You know, it wasn't just, oh, this is highbrow art stuff. It was like, there's a fucking brilliant drama set in a Borstal on TV, or it's about soccer hooligans, and Gary Oldman's in it, you know. Anyway, her process was not auditions. It was to get a bunch of people in a room and just let them give you some scenarios, some improv stuff. I met some great actors on that. There was a lot of people who became quite well known just starting out. Robert Carlyle was one who you will know. If you don't know his name, you'd know his face. Kate Hardy was another who had been in a lot of things. Andrew Tiernan. You probably wouldn't know them, but you'd know their faces. And it was this group of people who were daring each other to just go a little further. And Kate, in particular, had done a film with Neil Jordan called Mona Lisa. She had done this film called The Craze with Peter Medak. And she was a great teacher. We were actually the same age exactly, or hours, there was hours between us. And I was like, oh, can I do this, can I do that? And she's just like, just do whatever you want to make this work, you know? And so I started developing a kind of system. It's not like a style or a technique or whatever, but it was very loose, you know, as in you'd have some kind of rules for yourself, but the main rule was that there are no rules, and it was just do it. And breaking rules I've always found very inspiring and exciting. I always thought when I was starting out that acting was supposed to be like a rebellious thing to do, you know, because you're looking at James Dean or Marlon Brando, you think, oh, it's rebellious, but it's mostly not rebellious, actually. And it's, you know, there's so many people who are really way too conformist for my liking in there, and you have to be able to show up and do. There's a lot of, you know, protocol that you've got to keep in order to make the thing work. But in terms of, you know, how you are feeling on a day-to-day basis, it should be really loose. And I wish I could practice that as well as I preach it, but and be just a little bit more looser. But and also I looked back at some stuff from those early days, because I just wanted to remind myself of what I'd been up to, and there was plenty of stuff in there that nobody's ever seen. Most of the stuff that I'm proud of and that I've done, it really hasn't been seen by many people, but it's there. So I know it's there.
What is success then?
Success? I don't know. For me, as in, giving it all, all your thought, and not being compromising. And the idea of it being seen is important, and I don't mean to be too self-deprecating and make out that like none of this stuff has been seen, because it has. And like that drama, for example, Safe, the improvised one about these homeless kids, it did win the BAFTA that year for best single drama, and we went to along, and it's, it opened some doors. Didn't really open that many, but it did, it was recognized for sure. Success, yeah. I mean, putting everything into it.
Awards, money.
Not money,
visibility, recognition.
No, I mean the recognition's all right. Awards not super important. Money definitely not that important, and especially when you're 22 or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're sleeping on couches anyway, and BBC and all that. There wasn't much money in it. Anyhow, getting to do other things, if it opens the doorway for you to be considered a viable actor, as in, especially if you're terrible at auditions like I was, you end up doing something else, then something else. But there's a direct line between every job I've had, like right up until now, back to that theatre above the pub in London. I can tell you, like, this happened because of that, because of that, because of that. Like, it's just it's a pinball, but it's a straight line. It's not a straight line, but it's just one line.
What challenges excite you today that didn't interest you 20 years ago?
I don't know about that, because I was always interested in everything, and one of the reasons I wanted to become an actor is because from age, 8, younger, I don't know, I always saw the world as a really amazing playground, like a work of art, a living dream. I wanted to be part of it and to be part of painting that picture, so I've always been interested in everything, people. Nowadays, and the more it went on, although I always felt like this, it was the doing of the thing, not the finished product, not a hotel room, not going to a film festival and walking on a red carpet or any of that stuff, or being famous or any of that. Never interested, and still not in any of that. So it's the actual working, going in and doing it on the day. That's what excites me.
Maybe technology today.
Just that it's easier to do your own thing.
To do.
Yeah, I mean, it means that there's so much stuff going on though, and you've got a lot of, I get a lot of requests of people, not just friends, would you come and do a bit on my thing, and I do it probably too much, but also, the fact that anyone can make a film now on without too much resources is great, but it's also can be a bit overwhelming if you're an accessible, amenable person like I am. It can be a bit like you've got to say no to stuff.
You can make music today without.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, and some of the stuff that I've done that I am proudest of was stuff that I have done with one particular friend who I was just talking to right now before coming down here, and somebody in Australia who may help us make something. It's very personal, small scale stuff. But we've done 4 projects together, and we've done them for the first one. We had a budget, and we did win some awards at festivals like Edinburgh and Dinard, and then the next one was smaller, 25 grand budget, and then the next one was no budget. And then, but they're all valid, quite interesting projects, which whatever. And then we're going to do some other stuff. But is this getting boring? Yes.
What's the biggest misconception people have about playing villains or anti-heroes?
I don't know. I don't know what their conceptions or their misconceptions are.
You have feedback from, Littlefinger, or maybe another.
Well, the feedback is, I suppose, that people think you I don't think people think you are that character, but what they think is maybe that you only play those characters. And then you'll get offered, if it's in a successful, so Game of Thrones being the obvious case to point, because that show was huge and what was the biggest thing in the world probably at the time. They'll send, you'll get more roles like that if you want to play them, and you may not, or you can pick the good ones. And they're fun. It is fun to do. They're definitely fun to do. But I think everyone knows that villain roles are fun to do. But you can do them, and then you can use your villain career to fund your art house, small scale, independent films with your friends. But no, that opened loads of doors for me, and I don't knock it at all. There was a few things along the way. The first one, in a minor way, was Safe. The next thing was a TV series I did in 1998 called Queer as Folk, which really did open loads of doors, and it makes you castable, which is ridiculous, but it means that you can get cast in things without having to go through that audition process, and people will agree, oh yeah, we can get him because people know his name or whatever, or because he's just taken on a really daring role and done a good job on it, which, that's part of it. I don't like to admit that, probably, but it's true.
Did you ever sympathize with Littlefinger?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would sympathize with all characters I play, and you have to make it you and bring. I think this goes back to something you said earlier. Is it when you see it on the page? Is it like, does it have to be different? Does it have to have a part of you? I think it definitely has to have a little part of you in there in order for you to pull it off. But I would always try and splice a character with my own personality. Now, in terms of if somebody wants you to play that part in the first place, they're going to see something in you that's in there. But I've been surprised myself by some of the roles that have come my way. I'm like, why would I do that? Gorky Resort would be one of them. It's a surprise when somebody says, would you play this Russian NKVD officer in 1939? And there's been a few others. There's like, I've played a number of real people apart from him. A couple of politicians, a comedian, a few other people. There's one of my roles that I'm proudest of is it's a three-part TV drama we did in Ireland about 10 years ago called Charlie, about Charles Haughey, who was our Taoiseach Prime Minister. He had 3 different terms, like from the 70s into the 80s into the 90s. He was a very divisive, compelling, corrupt. Well, as a politician, and that's not unusual for politics and corruption to be intertwined. He was hugely charismatic.
We know that.
And a lover of the arts, and still very divisive. Anyway, what I'm saying is I don't look anything like this guy, right? But we managed to make it work, But it was about studying this guy inside out and then bringing aspects of your own personality to bear, in order to make it work and to make it interesting. And once you were able to fix yourself mentally to this person and to the times through like loads of research, but also what is it about in my own personality that can I can stick to this, and suddenly you start to look like the guy, because everyone said I looked exactly like him and I don't look anything like him.
So you stay with your characters for a long time. You don't leave them.
Yeah, I mean, no, I do. I would say definitely the preamble or the preparation part, it would be my my life for months or whatever, and months isn't even that long. And nowadays with the internet and all that, it's a great tool for research, especially if it's a politician where there's tons and tons and tons of material, especially if it's a self-regarding politician like Charles Haughey. He's even made documentaries about himself. There's loads to play with, but I really do love the day at the end where you just go, I'm done, and just throw it away. I literally take the clothes off and just throw them out the window. But then it comes back after a while. So you kind of make this great show about even just the way I'm talking about it. Like you do this and you cast it off and then you forget about it forever, but you actually don't forget about it forever. And I think I'd be thinking about things that I've done 40 years ago every day, you know.
Do you learn from younger actors?
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing how quickly you become the youngest member in the company, by the way, to the oldest member in the company. It happens like, I can't even tell you, you know. Because when I started out in that theatre in London, I was like way younger than everybody. And now there's like one of them, you know. And the last theatre show I did, I'm like, wow, I'm now 20 years older than everyone in this. And it happened in like a heartbeat. I just did in Ireland, we made a film called Trad. Again, it was, you know, one of these ones that's a real struggle to put together. No money. We just showed it at a festival in Czech Republic called, in a city called Zlin, which is a youth-oriented film festival where it did really well there and everyone loved it. We weren't sure, but anyway, the main characters in it are two teenagers. And yeah, watching people doing things for the first time, non-actors also who were musicians, but being in a room watching people who've never done it before, it irons out your kind of, any bad habits you might have, they don't have a chance to really come into play because they have never done it before. So you've got to be just in the moment and all the rest of it. Apart from learning stuff from just the energy and reminding yourself of this is what it's about, it's just this raw, fresh energy. It's just an amazing privilege to be there looking at somebody do something for the first time on a camera. And I don't like rehearsing either, it's just worth throwing in there. And there's things that happen will happen on a, not even on a camera, but in a rehearsal. You know, the first time you say the lines to each other that never happen again. And quite often, I think there's wasted opportunities there where people will go over and over and over and rehearse something for weeks, and it's just completely, the spark was gone like long ago, probably gone after the first time they said it. So there's a few directors. One director I've worked with in particular, Dominic Savage, an English director, who also, as a very young actor, had worked with Stanley Kubrick in Barry Lyndon. Just throwing that in as a nugget. But his process is, and this is a really interesting one actually, because he's really into improvisation, but not carte blanche, as in, you know, we're just going to make this drama and we don't know what it's about. He writes a script, and it's quite, you know, tight, as in, this is, and the thing we did was about the 2007 financial crisis told from 3 different perspectives. It was a one-off drama called Free Fall. And he has a script, but there's no dialogue. And also the actors don't meet each other until they're being filmed. And you don't know what's going to happen, other than you'll get a script and it says, you go into this office and you're going to try and take out a mortgage. And then you film it.
What kind of experience or experiment attracts you in your job, in acting, in fact?
Well, that, for example, where it's you know it's going to be exciting every day, that you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know who the other actor is who's going to walk through the door. But it's not just that, and mostly, you know, things aren't like that, and they can't be like that, because otherwise it would just be chaos, and, you know, there needs to be some form, and people need to know, well, we've got a script, and it's in this genre, and it's science fiction, or whatever. So, it's just a good, exciting, daring, sensational, maybe, character. So there was kind of hanging out for, you know, maybe I could get this job, but I'll wait. And there was a lot of theater offers coming in, because a lot of the stuff at the start was theater. So saying no to that was something that was kind of frowned upon at the time, especially because you knew the people and they'd given you some of your first jobs, and they're like, okay, now we're going to go and do this play here, and it's going to be 6 months all in, because we're going on tour. And I'd be like, I'm not doing it. And they were like, well, you're not working. I'm like, I know, but... and then you wait, and it did work. This tactics did work, but it didn't make, you know, it didn't lose friends over it. But people thought it was peculiar, you know. But I don't see anything peculiar about it. Waiting for sorry, I'm not even answering your question, so.
No, it's okay. What do you think about young actors today? Are these good times to be an actor? Present times?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I know there's like, I suppose the main difference now in, say, if it was Ireland or London, there's just way more people doing it or trying to do it. It was really, you know, I think when I was starting out, it was everyone was just like, no, you're never going to make a living as an actor. It's impossible. You know, maybe there's a few people, you know, who just, that's not a, you know, a valid career choice whatsoever. But whereas now, it is, you know, and there's all these, you know, apart from the fact that there's, say in Ireland, for example, someone can go, well, there's Saoirse Ronan and Cillian Murphy and Colin Farrell, and there's people, you know, they're all over everything. They're huge stars. They're winning Oscars. You know, it is actually a valid career choice. And you know, there's drama schools, and there's a whole. Not just is there a big industry, but there's also a big industry built around it. And but it means that there's a load of people being turned out, and you know, there is more work being done, but there's 10 times more people looking for it. So I don't know that it's actually that different. The difference is that, yeah, you can make your own stuff. And this self-tape culture thing, which is the way a lot of people audition for stuff now, is pretty interesting. Because it means you can go, if you're, you know, not good in a room with performing for people that you've never met before or whatever, you can do it at home and maybe have 10 shots and you know, get some friends involved or whatever and do it properly, or just make your own thing. And also Facebook. I mean, I've met people. One of the better actors I'd met recently had got cast off Facebook in a film, which I thought was pretty amazing.
You said that television changed the rules and paradigm.
Well, I don't know. Television itself has changed massively since I don't know, the 80s. That's me pouring water all over the floor. I better drink a bit just so it ends up in me and not on the floor. Yeah, the TV thing. There was definitely there was a thing of like TV was it's considered to be the poorer relation to film or whatever still in the 80s, and it did change. Now the form has kind of changed completely. Whereas a lot of there's still daring stuff happening in cinema, of course. But there's loads of really daring stuff happening on television. And there's this like 6-season format thing that's become, you know, just like the standard where you can have 60 episodes of something like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos or The Wire. And it can be very open-ended. It doesn't even have to have a conclusion, you know? Like the end of all of those, actually. Well, particularly The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, you know, 60-episode book that remains kind of an open book. I think it's brilliant. But that started a long time ago. I mean, people think of it as The Sopranos, and I always thought of it as it was maybe, thank you, maybe Twin Peaks, you know, the David Lynch series where people were, you know, or Heimat, the German TV series, which was doing that way before that. You know, in like early 80s, was it? I'm asking Roman because Roman will know.
Somebody said.
Yeah.
Somebody said that inflation of the stories kill the story itself.
It depends on what the story is, though, and who's writing it. You know. I mean, some of those things run on forever and nothing's happening. But there was always loads of happening in The Wire. There was always loads happening in The Sopranos. They're not all going to be great, and there's definitely a thing of where there's a danger of just style and over substance or lack of, you know. There's been things I've tried to watch on TV, and I'm just like, I can't. There's too much on TV. You know, if you've got like subscribed to all these streamers, and you just go through it, and it's like shh. And it's designed to make you do that as well. You're not even supposed to watch it. You're supposed to watch a bit of it and then get bored. That's why they're throwing ads at you while you're watching it. And if you want to persevere, fine. But like, it's designed to make you just click onto something else. And there's loads, it's difficult for me to find some. I find myself watching, I'll always go probably to the films section and find something there. Or just go to a very bespoke, if you're watching streamers, something like the BFI or whatever, or Criterion, where you can watch really good films. And a lot of the institutes like the Irish Film Institute or whatever, and I'm sure it's the same here, you can find, they'll have all kinds of really interesting stuff. It might be TV advertisements from the 1970s or educational films or, just stuff like that.
So do you think that we need another kind of stories on streaming channels, or what kind of stories do you think are missing from screens today?
I don't think that there's stories. I think there's a lot of good stories out there. I just think there's so much stuff. I think it's maybe kind of what we need is less stories or, just a way of streamlining stuff so you can find the good stories. I think there's loads of really interesting stories, and some of the stuff that becomes mainstream is really offbeat, Like Breaking Bad, for example, which is, really mainstream. It's really offbeat. His other show, that guy Vince Gillen, Pluribus, that was kind of so strange and offbeat. Sopranos is that's kind of pretty mainstream, but it's an offbeat telling of that kind of gangster thing. I think it's the storytelling is really sophisticated. I just think there's so much stuff, and
it's a big competition.
Yeah, and even the TV stuff now is being designed to kind of try and give you these little hits every now and then, because they know people are, because of TikTok and telephones and, that even the sophisticated, high-end TV stuff is also being kind of dumbed down a little to kind of keep people interested. And the way kids watch stuff, I'd be kind of worried about that, Like I went to see a film where there was a lot of kids in the audience in the IMAX. It was actually Barbie, right? And so there was a lot of girls there who hadn't, and it was just coming out of the pandemic, like lockdown and stuff like that. So there was people there who'd never been in a cinema before, and all the girls in front of me, and it was mostly girls, but it wasn't just girls, but they were all filming the film, So they were looking at an IMAX screen through a telephone. So it's like the biggest screen in the country, and they're like looking at it like through their phone like that, while filming it. And I think they were wanting to film it, but they were also wanting to look at it through the phone because it was what they were used to doing. So people definitely like looking at stuff, but they like looking at stuff that's short and looking at 4 different things at the same time. Maybe there's nothing you can do about that. Maybe me going on about this is like the time the radio came in, and your great grandparents were going on, this thing is like the devil's work and it's going to rot these people's brains. Definitely TV was like that when I was a teenager, and it's like, this TV is like going to kill our kids. And I used to watch it, I used to come home from school and go to bed with the TV on and watch 10 hours of TV.
What keeps you curious after so many years in industry?
What makes me what?
What keeps you curious?
People, it's the same thing that got me into it in the first place. Was actually it wasn't just the stuff I was seeing and going, I want to be in, Rumblefish or whatever it was. But it was the people. I joined this theater group, right, when I was 14, and the people were just so eccentric, and not just the kids, but there was all these other people around, and you were like, you just weren't really sure, what was what, but, this kind of thing of this artistic bohemian crowd, it was just really kind of intriguing to me. And if you're any kind of if you have any kind of outsider traits or oddball eccentricities, which I do, you're just going to feel you found your thing and you're at home. So the people, that definitely, and the people you meet, and especially now when I've been doing it for long enough that I'm kind of, it seems to be all just about the experience of doing it, and coming to say here, for example, is really interesting. Going to places, meeting new people, it's kind of what it's all about, really. like this is way more interesting. But being here at this festival is like, you know, this is way more intriguing and interesting than being, say, at the Cannes Film Festival.
Why?
Because it's this. It's, you know, it's smaller. It's interactive. You know, it's about accessibility as opposed to exclusivity. You know, it's the opposite. Now I know they both have their place, you know, but like doing the kind of things I was doing apart from those TV things and some big film parts and all the rest of it, the stuff I was doing that kind of still that got me, you know, I ended up playing those parts because I had had a chance to play these other parts and things with my friends or whatever, where we, you know, we depended on festivals like here or the Edinburgh Festival, you know, which is slightly bigger, or Dinard in France, or Locarno, and some other ones, Dublin, Galway, London, to get our things seen. You know, like if it's a certain scale of, you know, to drum up some interest, maybe pick up, you know, and there's the awards thing or whatever. It does come into it, and they are important, you know, for a small, if your project's small and needs some attention. This festival route is, yeah, you have to go that way, and it's really good fun.
If you could give one piece of advice to young actors attending TIFF, what would it be?
I don't know, because I don't think there's any one blanket piece of advice that you can give that's going to apply to everybody. The best advice I got maybe was to do whatever your own individual, any traits you might have that, you know, kind of make you stand out. Like, don't iron them out, which is a thing that drama schools can do. I think part of the thing is to literally, like, kind of roll, like a roller pin, kind of roll people's weirdness and eccentricities out and make you into a kind of a standard technique-bearing actor who's able to... I was never sure what this... There was this thing they were always talking about, technique, you know, this is what you learn in drama school. And I was like... And it sounded great, and I was like, what is it? Now, what is this technique? And what it is, apparently, is it's a thing you can fall back on, so you can pretend, you know, like, so if you're on stage, for example, and you don't feel it, if you don't have the, you know, the actual emotion for real, you can, you know, you got this technique where you can, it's really easy to pretend
some
that
tools,
you're, pretend you're happy or pretend you're sad, whereas, I don't know, all the best actors are like, they just didn't seem like they were pretending, or they were happy, or they were sad. Somebody years back said to me, why are you trying to be like these other actors? Because you're pretty interesting yourself. Now, I'm not saying I'm really interesting, right? But it kind of encouraged me to use my own personality a lot more and not be trying to look like another actor or trying to emulate the actors that I liked. I could still like them and still be inspired by them, but do your own thing. And it seems, by talking to people and looking back over stuff, that I do have something of a reputation for being, you know, eccentric and a little, you know, offbeat, and that's fine. And I kind of and I did lean into it.
Do you like you?
So being yourself while being other people. I think don't be afraid to be a little.
Do you like you seeing? Do you like yourself on the movies on the big screen?
It depends on what it is. I mean, I don't really feel the need to watch the stuff anymore, for sure. You do find yourself looking at the some of the older stuff just to remind you, just to remind yourself you've actually done it. No, I've never really liked. No, I'll try and do a good job, but of course, if you're self-critical, like. I think probably most artists of any kind are extremely self-analytical and self-critical. It can be just a bit of a waste of time rather than anything, you know. And then you find yourself spending, say, if you're shooting a TV thing or whatever, and you're doing like loads of scenes every day, you can't and don't have much time because you need to sleep, you need to learn the dialogue and I usually learn the dialogue like the night before, not like the week before or whatever. And even if there's loads of it, I'll try and learn it the night before. So you don't have time to be to be spending even 5 minutes about what you got wrong today or what you did today that was, because you can get into this frame of mind where you're thinking retrospectively about what you've done and what you might have done wrong, or what you might have done right. But your energy is needed for tomorrow, and even if it's just something as practical as need to learn those lines or need to have some ideas. So that's another. I would say that's definitely another good bit of advice: is whatever you do, just like forget it that day and think about what you're doing tomorrow.
Which character stayed with you long after filming ended, and why?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Which character stayed with you long after filming ended, and why?
Some of them are theater roles, which
Theater.
Some of them are theater roles, but the screen ones that people might know. Well, there's some that stay with you because other people bring them up all the time. That's one thing, right? So there's ones you can't get away from, and that's fine, and it's that's okay. There's a character in. There was a film we did based on a play, which I was also in, called Mojo, in the late '90s. That's one that I think about quite a lot. That stays with me, and it was a kind of a crucial one for me in that it was. For some reason, I played in the theater show. There was these two characters, both of which were like the flip side of each other. One was very naive and a victim and quite gullible, and the other one was very dark and controlling and seductive and persuasive. And this was a play written by Jez Butterworth, who's gone on to become probably the most celebrated playwright out of England, and has written scripts for James Bond films and stuff like this. But this was his first play, and I got to play both of the roles, one in the play and one in the film. And when that switch came, it kind of changed things again for me in terms of the parts I was getting, but also my own confidence. And because it wasn't like me at all. And I just got really into a little bit more of I can really pretend to be anyone here. So that one constantly comes back. The Game of Thrones Littlefinger comes back because people bring it up all the time. But I don't think about it. That's why. I probably would have forgot about it. There's a couple of theater ones. There's a play called Faith Healer, which was the last play I did, and it was like a monumental kind of really tricky. I hadn't done a play for about 8 years, and I thought the next time, if I even do one, I want it to be the most difficult task, And it's a play. It's 4 monologues with 3 actors, and the character I played had 2 of the monologues, one at the start and the one at the end. You've got to tell this really complicated story, and then 2 other people are going to come on and tell different versions of that story. Then you're going to go back and try and tell it again. Because there was so much dialogue and just so much of it, monologue actually, there's certain parts of, and this is purely practical we're talking about in terms of not being able to forget it, there's parts of wherever I learnt it, which was Dublin, but also Scotland and somewhere else. And I can't go to these, anytime I go to these places, it's like Pavlov's dog. The dialogue just starts coming out. And that's of course frustrating because then you go, oh yeah, now I get it. But we did a production of The Tempest, like Shakespeare's The Tempest. I played Ariel, and we did it like underwater. We didn't do it all underwater, but my entrances and exits were either from the ceiling, from a trapeze, or coming out from under the water, or down into the water. And anytime I get into a swimming pool or go underwater, those lines go through my head. Again, it's Pavlov again. I can't not do it. I'm not just trying to tell you a cute story about Shakespeare and Ariel, but that's the truthful answer.
We have time for some question. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello. I wanted to ask, out of all of your career, what do you think is a project that didn't get enough attention and you would recommend us all to watch?
Well, it's just there's quite a lot of them, and it's not that they got the appropriate amount of attention at the time, I suppose. I would say that my work with the director Jamie Traves is, you know, we did 3-4 things together, and they were quite formative, I suppose, for me. So there's a film called The Lowdown, there's a film called Treacle Jr., and I'd say those, and also that thing we were just talking about there called Mojo. But they're very hard to find. I know Mojo is on YouTube, the whole thing, but don't watch it on YouTube if you can avoid it. No, it's tiny and it's slightly out of focus. And, no, the film itself isn't out of focus. It was really beautifully shot by this guy Bruno de Kaiser, and Harold Pinter's in it. I mean, it's for real, but try and find it somewhere else. Yeah, The Lowdown, Mojo, Treacle Jr., and the TV film Free Fall. I'm really proud of that. And Safe, if you can find that. Safe, Free Fall, Mojo, Treacle Jr., The Lowdown. I'll write them down. I'll write them on. Have you got a blackboard? Oh yeah. There's one of those younger versions of myself up there.
Mulțumesc frumos. Aiden, as a fellow Irishman in Cluj, there's a lot of excitement about you walking around town. But I heard a rumor, in town that someone said Bucharest is your favorite city in Romania, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to confirm that Cluj is your favorite city in Romania.
Well, it's a good story, but I've never been to Bucharest.
Okay. So it is a rumor. And the second rumor...
But I do love Cluj.
Happy days. The second rumor is that your character in Peaky Blinders, Amarama Gold, is getting a spin-off series where he goes into politics and saves democracy. Can you confirm that as well? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I would love if that were true. Yeah, I actually did love playing that character, Amarama Gold, who was... just a little side note on that, because it kind of does dovetail a little what you're talking about. But like Stephen Knight, who writes, because it was written as, I looked at it and I said, well, he's obviously a Romany gypsy, right? But like of that bloodline in England, in the middle of on the Welsh borders or whatever. And Stephen Knight, who is the writer, was like, oh yeah, well you're Irish, so he's an Irish traveller. And I was like, he's not. He's a Romany gypsy, surely. Living in England, so I managed to convince him on that front. But yeah, I mean, it sounds great actually. Maybe we should put that together. I'd have to come back from the dead, but I've done that before. We're in the right place for it.
There.
Thanks.
Hi, my question concerns Queer as Folk. I was wondering, how did that role come about, and how do you look back on that project?
Okay, that's a good question. So there's this series called Queer as Folk, which we did in end of the 90s. That role came about, like, the way I'm saying that it's from one thing to the other or whatever. It came about from this film, Mojo, which came from the play, which came from somewhere else, whatever. And also, I don't want to make this too long-winded, but there's a thing about having your own ideas and making them, just impressing them and going, no, it's not like trying to take over directing, although it is a bit. There was one scene we did in that where this character walks, this scene sitting, it's like a quarter of a page. Now I'm not even talking about Queer as Folk now, but I'm getting to it. A quarter of a page in the script of Mojo, this character, it says, baby sits on a lion in Trafalgar Square, there's a red sunset, he's sunning himself, he walks down the street. So I was like, well, that's it. That's where the whole character is going to be there in that quarter of a page with no dialogue. And I got the director to say, can we play some music on these big speakers when I'm walking down the street here? And it was a bit of an effort to get him to do it, but they did let us do it. And we shot this sequence. And there's an actor called Ben Daniels who was at the screening of it at the London Film Festival. And he looked at the scene and he said, if you ever make it in like movies or get more screen work, whatever. It's going to be from that walk. And so when Queer as Folk came along, producer Nicholas Schindler says, yeah, we saw that thing, we saw you walking down the street in that, and we thought you're the person for this character. So that's how it came about. And it was, for me, yeah, I mean, you know, it's a TV series. It's written by Russell Davis. The main three protagonists or whatever, they're gay men living in Manchester. But it's not just about that. It was sensational, and I wasn't doing it just because for the sake of sensationalism, although I was always looking for sensational characters. But when I looked at that again, I saw this is a panoramic view of a city in a particular time, and it's not one we see all. You know, it's England. You see London a lot. You see Manchester a bit, but it was like the fact that, you know, whatever these guys. You know, sexual preference were nothing to do with anything to me. It was just like a fucking brilliant story in a brilliant kind of panoramic setting that was so well written by Russell Davies, who is one of the best writers in television. And at the time, people were going, "Oh, that's really daring," and that's, you know, but yeah, it is. But I mean, we weren't. There was nothing daring about playing the part, and people are like, "Oh yeah, we're you know, were you advised to do that, not to do it, whatever." Not at all. And it was amazing how much of a mainstream hit that became. Like, it was huge. And it was, I think at the time, people thought it was going to be, you know, just very niche, but it wasn't, because it was so well written. Thanks.
One more.
What's your favorite movies, Sean Penn?
Sean Penn? Probably Falcon and the Snowman. One called At Close Range. Now, At Close Range looks like an 80s pop video, and it kind of is. Madonna did the music for it, and it's got a very 80s sheen, MTV era thing to it. But it was those two films, Falcon and the Snowman, which he gives like a brilliant performance in. It's a bit might be a bit overcooked, but it's fucking brilliant. Because he just looked so different. He was like, you know, it was a bit like, I suppose, when people were going about De Niro in Raging Bull or whatever. I was looking at Sean Penn in Falcon and the Snowman going, that can't be the same guy. So Falcon and the Snowman, Bad Boys, where he played a guy in prison. These are quite early ones. And also later on, maybe Carlito's Way. It's great in Milk also. Yeah, those ones.
I'm sorry we don't have time anymore, but now Mr. Aidan Gillen is ready for autographs. Ladies and gentlemen,
Is he?
Aidan Gillen.
Is he?
Two more. Yeah, we have two more questions. Yeah, there. Just two. Okay. Please.
Hello, Mr. Gillen.
Hi.
My question for you is, what is something you learned from working with Helen McCrory?
Helen McCrory?
Yeah.
Right. Right, that's a good one. Because Helen, I had worked before doing Peaky Blinders, in which we played lovers, and that kind of informed that, like, everyone's going, okay, this guy is an assassin. He's a cold-blooded assassin. And I was like, he's not. He's a romantic. He's a romantic. And part of it was because I knew that I was going to be, you know, and things were going to be romantic between Helen and myself. But we had played lovers before in a play called Platonov, which is based on an unfinished Chekhov play. And, you know, and it was a 3.5 hour, it was a huge production that we did in 22 years ago or something. So we had history, and she is really, really, she's dead. Well, she's not with us anymore. She's dead. But she was so passionate and so in the moment. Like being on stage with her, she was like so raw. You know, her energy was like, she literally would be kind of like vibrating just at the, you know, this kind of intense frequency. She was so in the moment and passionate and daring in the way she not just acted but lived. So you could see it so up front on stage, and because I knew that, I went out of my way when we went to Peaky Blinders for me to find her, and because I hadn't seen her for years, and we never really socialized much the first time around. but just like let's go out, let's go and see, just meet each other and spend some time together before we've got to do these scenes, because and I think she knew she was ill at that point, but other people didn't.
Thank you.
But just passion and in the moment, daring. She wasn't afraid of anything, and on stage she really wasn't. I've seen her do some stuff, and it's like kind of jaw-dropping.
She was an incredible woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you.
Can I? Hi again. How are you?
Did I tell you?
Yeah, I asked you a question. I got the chance to ask you another question on your movie, but my question will be short, even though I have in my head a lot of questions to ask you. Would you come back to Romania or to Cluj to do a project here in Romania, like as an actor or any kind of project that involves cinema or acting?
Yeah, of course I would.
And where can we follow your upcoming projects or your upcoming movies?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have quite a lot of upcoming stuff. I've been pretty busy, and there's several things that are kind of in the pipeline. I suppose you can just look at them on IMDb and see what they are, and see where they might come out, because that's what I do.
True.
It's like the next thing I'm going to do immediately is Guy Ritchie does this Young Sherlock TV series, and I'm going to do another. Actually, I'm not supposed to say that. Right. So I'm not going to be in.
Sorry.
Ritchie's upcoming.
I wasn't fishing for any spoilers, sorry.
Don't actually say it. No, nobody. I think I've just broken a contractual thing there. It's not that it's a big secret, but it's definitely not. I don't think that's been announced, or there's a contractual. I haven't signed. Yeah, so I'm not doing that. But like, there's also there's a writer that I really. I should have been up here all the way. This is better. There's a writer in Ireland called Stuart Carolan who's we did this series called Love Hate in Ireland, which is is really successful. That's another one that people go on about all the time. So the thing here, you'll be having these conversations about Game of Thrones, but in Ireland, like people just call me John, right, or John Boy, because of this character I played, and it was a hugely successful crime series in Ireland. And he's written this new thing that I've done with him called Tall Tales of Murder. So the first season of that comes out, I think, in September, and then we're going to do a second season of it which also hasn't been announced, in February. And some good film parts. I ended up doing a lot of stuff. I think it was a result of like the actors' strike, kind of in America, kind of changing just the way things were worldwide, but it didn't really hit till like a year later. COVID, the way that changed things. And so there's this thing that like a couple of years down the line, suddenly the whole landscape has changed. And I ended up doing stuff in like Hong Kong, in a lot of film parts where it had been TV before. So there's a film with Sam Esmail, who made Mr. Robot. It's called Panic Carefully. It's a film with Julia Roberts and Elizabeth Olsen, Eddie Redmayne, Brian Terry Henry. I've been in that. Just did something with Angelina Jolie called Sunny, like an independent film in New York. And a few other things. I can't even remember what they are, but I've been busy.
Thank you for the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, Aidan Gillen, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry for talking too fast, because I know I was talking too fast and in an Irish accent that you mightn't get, but apparently I'm signing autographs now.